Welcome to the Explainer. So, if you're a desk worker, a gamer, or honestly, just someone who spends way too many hours glued to a screen every single day, listen up because this one is literally made for you. Today, we're diving into the mechanics of a totally hidden posture killer, pelvic tilt.
Let's start with a really simple but incredibly relatable question. Why does your lower back hurt after sitting? It's crazy, right? You finish a long session at the computer, you stand up, and bam! There's this unexplained nagging ache in your lower back, or just this stubborn tightness in your hips. We kind of just accept it like, oh well, I guess I'm just getting older, or that's desk life for you. But the reality? The culprit is actually something way more structural.
Now, what's really interesting about this next number is just how wild it is, 85. According to the research, 85% of men and 75% of women actually have an anterior pelvic tilt. And the craziest part? Most of them are walking around completely oblivious to it. So yeah, there's a pretty massive chance that you are sitting with a misaligned pelvis right at this very second.
To fix it, here's our game plan for today. We're going to cover 1. The root of back pain. 2. Pelvic tilt basics explained. 3. Try the Thomas test. 4. Fixing anterior pelvic tilt. 5. Fixing posterior pelvic tilt. And 6. Daily movement tips. Stick with me, and by the end of this explainer, you'll be armed with the exact toolkit you need to finally fix that posture.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the root of back pain, the sedentary epidemic.
So we really need to look at how our daily habits are, well, quite literally causing our bodies to break down over time. The data shows that nearly 27% of adults sit for more than 4 hours a day, and prolonged sitting, it's basically the hidden mastermind behind all these issues. See, this lack of movement does something terrible. It actually shortens the tendons around your pelvic bones, leaving you with weak, excessively tight muscles. This muscular imbalance forces an exaggerated, unnatural curve in your lower spine. And over time, this whole chain reaction leads straight to lower back, hip, and knee pain, and it can even cause forced knee rotations and sciatica. This right here is exactly why fixing your alignment is just absolutely crucial. Okay, let's dive right into Section 2. Pelvic tilt basics explained, understanding your foundation. Let's shift gears and look at the actual plumbing, so to speak, the anatomical mechanics of the pelvis. Think of your pelvis as a basin-shaped set of bones that connects your lumbar spine down to your legs. It supports your abdominal organs and beautifully balances your entire trunk. Actually, I want you to picture the pelvis as a literal basin holding water. Ideally, your pelvis should be perfectly level, right? So the water stays neatly inside the basin. But when our muscles get overly tight or weak, well, that basin starts to tip.
And when things go out of whack, it generally happens in one of two ways. On one hand, we have anterior pelvic tilt. This is exactly like water spilling out the front of the basin. The pelvis tips forward and down simply because the hip flexors in the front are tight and shortened. That pulls everything forward, creating an exaggerated lower back curve. Basically, it pushes your belly out. Now look at the opposite issue, posterior pelvic tilt. This is water spilling out the back of the basin. The pelvis tips backward and up. In this case, your hamstrings and glutes are the culprits. They get excessively tight, which tucks your glutes inward and rounds out your upper back.
Moving on to Section 3. Try the Thomas test. Assess your alignment.
Okay, I want to invite you to do a little self-discovery right now. Let's test your own posture to see exactly where you stand. Here is how you can perform what's called the Thomas test, right at home, and hey, feel free to pause this explainer to actually try it. Step 1. Sit right on the edge of a sturdy table or bench. Step 2. Lie back flat so your legs hang off at the knee. Step 3. Pull one leg in, bending the knee to pull it tightly against your chest, all while keeping your back totally flat against the table. And finally, Step 4. Hold that stretch for about 30 seconds and carefully watch your resting leg, the one just hanging off the edge.
So what does this all mean? The crucial point is this. If your pelvis is aligned correctly, the back of your resting leg will naturally stay touching the table. But if that resting leg lifts off the table, if it starts to rotate, or if you can clearly see a gap beneath your thigh, well, that means your front thigh muscles are incredibly tight. And that is a massive red flag that you've got an anterior pelvic tilt.
All right, Section 4. Fixing anterior pelvic tilt, restoring balance. Let's get right into the instructional phase. We're focusing first on corrective exercises. For those of you who just realized your basin is tipping forward. A highly recommended move here is the half-kneeling hip flexor stretch, which is fantastic for relaxing those tight front muscles. To set this up, step one leg out into a lunge with your back knee resting on the floor. The absolute key here is keeping your torso perfectly upright. Don't just haphazardly lean forward. Instead, you want to tuck your tailbone, meaning give it a slight posterior tilt until you feel a deep stretch right in the front of your hip. This directly targets and loosens those tight hip flexors that are dragging your pelvis down.
Next up, let's look at building some much-needed core strength. First, we have the basic supine pelvic tilt. You lie on your back, consciously pull your belly button toward your spine, and flatten your lower back completely against the floor. Once you've got that dialed in, you can progress to the next variation, the pelvic tilt with a march. You keep that lower back super glued to the floor and slowly lift alternating legs without losing that flat back position. Trust me, if your lower back pops up off the floor, you've lost the form.
Now, to physically pull that pelvis backward, you have to build an ironclad back chain. You can start with squats to build a solid foundation in your glutes and quads. Just make sure to keep your back neutral and don't let those knees drift past your toes. From there, take it down to the floor for glute bridges. Push your heels firmly into the ground, lift your pelvis up, and really squeeze that core. You can round out the whole routine with kneeling leg lifts, which stretches the back while firing up the glutes. By strengthening this posterior chain, you're literally pulling your pelvis back into a healthy, neutral position.
Which brings us to Section 5, fixing posterior pelvic tilt, lengthening the back.
Okay, let's pivot and look at the exact opposite problem. What if your basin is spilling water out the back? For a backward tipping pelvis, we need to tackle weak front muscles and super tight back muscles. The mechanical goal here is pretty simple. Correcting a posterior tilt requires you to aggressively stretch out your tight hamstrings and glutes while simultaneously strengthening your weak hip flexors. Once you understand the why behind this, the exercises make a whole lot more sense.
So here is your toolkit for fixing a posterior tilt. Kick things off with leg lunges to build up the lower body and prevent any single muscle group from dominating. Though, quick disclaimer, don't go too deep if you have bad knees. Once you're warmed up, take a seat for a static hamstring stretch. Just stretch one leg out and bend forward from the hip, keeping your back perfectly straight to really lengthen those tight muscles. Next, hit the mat for the Superman exercise. Lie on your stomach and lift your chest to bulletproof your lower back. But hey, skip this one if you're currently dealing with acute back pain, okay? Finally, cap it all off with a relaxing cobra stretch, gently pushing up off the floor to lengthen the entire front of your body.
And finally, Section 6, daily movement tips, maintaining your neutral pelvis. Let's wrap things up with some essential lifestyle tweaks, because we don't want this pain coming back the second this explainer's over, right? Think of these as your daily non-negotiables for a pain-free back. First off, avoid prolonged sitting at all costs. Seriously, set a timer on your phone to get up and walk around every 30 minutes. Second, practice proper posture. Make a habit of keeping your spine straight and your body aligned whether you're standing in line or sitting at your desk. Third, grab a foam roller. Look, I know it's a love-hate relationship, but rolling out your calves and hamstrings acts like a deep tissue self-massage that loosens up tight connective fascia. And lastly, be consistent. Keep moving, because muscle activity benefits your entire body's range of motion. These are super simple, easy to adopt habits for anyone looking to undo the damage of a sedentary life.
Which brings us to our final and honestly most important question for you to ponder today. How is your pelvis tilted right now? Take a quick second, check your posture, and start using what you've learned today to get that basin perfectly level. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep moving.